Hi guys, welcome back to Outpost 18. My name's Liam and today I'm going to be continuing with our look at the individual characters that you can play in Darklight Memento Mori, and I thought today we'd have a look at the Outcast. This is a much simpler character to get your head around, so unlike the Necromancer which I reviewed recently, this is more of a point and click character really. It's an amazing character, and frankly if you're going to play this game, it's a hard game. You're only going to make it harder if you don't take this character. I would take this character every single time. It basically just destroys demons in droves as long as you set it up right. So looking at the basic stats, it starts off with a single melee attack which hits on a 4+, which is decent. It has 2 ranged attacks which hit on a 4+, which is bloody amazing. The belt size of 3 is also good. The initiative of 7 is fantastic to start off with, because you can easily buff that up with like a tattoo or something, giving it +2, taking that to 9, which is excellent. And it's got an average movement of 4. The health is good, it's 14, and the sanity, whilst it's not impressive as some, it's okay, it's sanity 6. Stat wise, they're all pretty average to be fair. Strength is 3, perception is good, that's 4, mind is 3, charisma is low at 2, but you probably won't need that with this character. Agility again is good, is 4, and endurance is 3. So before we start looking at the cards, and this character really doesn't have any bad cards. Okay, there are some which are mediocre, but they're all pretty damn good. It's hard to put together a poor build with the Outcast. That said, you want to get some equipment on this character really quickly. So the first time you get into town, just go shop for a ranged weapon of some description. Ideally, you probably want to get a longbow. They're excellent. They are a tad expensive at 250 gold crowns or gold coins, I forget which it is. However, a range 16 is really good because the Outcast can actually see in the dark, so that then becomes quite useful when you get monsters which set up several map tiles away. Because the rules dictate, rather than having to trudge all the way back and forwards, you can just pick them off from a distance with the Outcast if you've got range 16. Most of these ranged weapons have 2d6 damage, and like I said in the recent look at the Necromancer, if you can't generate 2d6 damage plus X, then you're not going to go very far at all. So the longbow does 2d6 plus 3 damage, which is brilliant. Remember, you're adding on the perception of 4 as well, so it's basically 2d6 plus 7, which is fantastic. The short bow is range 10s, 2d6 plus 2. It's still solid. You're looking at 40 gold crowns for that one, so if you can't afford the longbow, fine, doesn't matter, just get the short bow and upgrade for that +1 damage and extra range whenever you can. But just make it a priority to go get yourself a short bow or something to shoot with, because it's not until that point that the Outcast really shines. Again, you've got the crossbows and stuff. They're equally good as well, and they're going to give you +1 to hit. The light crossbow is pretty cheap to pick up, that's 15, so it's nothing really. Heavy crossbow is expensive, that's big beer, that's 600, so maybe that's something you go for in the later levels or something. Also that has a 4+ strength requirement, so off the bat with strength 3 the Outcast isn't going to be able to use that anyway. I like the bows, but the crossbows do give you that +1 to hit. Either way, one of these weapons in the hands of an Outcast is excellent. There is the Composite Bow too. You kind of have to do the maths on this one because this one only does 1d6 damage, but you do get to add your strength as well as your perception when shooting, so if you do go down the road of increasing your strength, then this can be okay, but I would suggest you probably give this one a miss and just focus on short bow and then go on to a long bow or something like that. The Outcast does start with the throwing knives. They're okay because they give you +1 ranged attacks. So you start off with 2 ranged attacks anyway, so you're going to immediately go up to 3 hitting on 4+, which is great. They only have a range of 4 though, so they're extremely limiting. So you want to get rid of these as soon as you can and basically go for a much better ranged weapon. You could go melee. The only reason you'd probably want to do that is if you go for one of the outcasts or miscellaneous skills, which is called versatile, and that basically says once per round before or after dealing an attack you may swap items in your hand slots for any of those in your inventory. So that is pretty useful because it does mean you can switch between close combat and ranged weapons and get the benefits of both worlds. But to be frank, the Black Knight, the Nephilim, the Exorcist, and the Revenant, they're much better at close combat. So whilst you can go down a close combat route, I don't personally think there's any point in doing that. So I know Versatile wasn't a bad card, I would probably stick it in the unnecessary pile if I were playing this character. So looking at the amazing cards, most of these are amazing. So I'll put Point Blank over there first of all. This one, just don't leave home without it basically. So you may use ranged attacks even when enemies are adjacent to you. If you take that, there's no need for Versatile really. I don't think it's worth it. I think you just have a kick-ass bow. You keep plinking away, whether people are 16 squares away or whether they're right next to you. That's such a good skill, because when the Outcast does get surrounded, if you're not using a bow, then it's a problem, and you're relying on other people to help you out really. So I would pick that up straight away, so you can use your bow in all situations. I think that skill is really good. Another really good skill, and I think is that level 1 skill. It's a level 1 skill, so you can get that straight away, which is well worth it. Another excellent skill is Sniper, and again this is a level 1, maybe you go for this second. So if you are more than 4 squares away from your target, which is pretty easy to achieve, especially if you're playing with another character, during a standard ranged attack, you'll get +1 to hit. So immediately this Terminator, for want of a better word, is hitting stuff on 3s with 2 shots, doing what, 2d6 damage +3 plus perception 7 is it, which is incredible. So you can just literally nail demons and just bite them to the walls. Really good. There are some others in here. So Marksmanship is good. I mean, this is level 5, so this is more getting towards endgame stuff, but your ranged attacks now hit on a 3+, so that's good. I mean, if you're using crossbows and stuff, it's probably redundant, but starting on a hit of a 3+ as opposed to a 4+ is really good. And when you combine that with Sniper, you're then basically hitting on 2+, so it's absolutely devastating. So if you can get those 3, you'll have a character which is just hitting stuff, annihilating stuff all day long, and all you really need to do is try and keep people away from it, from the Outcast. But that said, if you've got Point Blank, that's not a problem anyway. So those 3 cards, I personally think it's just crazy not to take them. They are so good. There are some others. I'm going to read off Arrow Storm. Arrow Storm is super impressive. So you can spend 2 stamina at the start of your phase to rain arrows down on your enemies. Only works when equipped with a bow. So again, another reason to take a bow as opposed to a crossbow. So you roll 1d6 for each of your ranged attacks. So you're starting off with 2, but I think you pick some other ranged attacks up quite quickly. So the Outcast, okay, it's not till level 5 that the Outcast picks up another ranged attack, so that is a little while off. It's possible you can pick up some items that give you +1 to ranged attacks. If you can do that, that's great. Must be melee then when they pick up. Yeah, so the Outcast gets a melee attack, an additional melee attack quite early at level 3. So roll 1d6 for each of your ranged attacks allowance, and add an additional, add 3 additional d6. These attacks all suffer -1 to hit, but if you have sniper, that's less of a problem. And all those hitting are evenly distributed amongst all enemies within an area of 4x4 squares. So you can choose this a little bit, because if you wanted to, you could move that 4x4 area and kind of slide it left or right, forwards or back, so you're just clipping 1 or 2 monsters, and actually you're raining a hell of a lot of arrows down then on a couple of monsters, so you can throw a bit of cheese at that if you want to. None of these squares can be out of your weapon range, but if you've got a range of 16, that's a moot point. Resolve the damage of each attack separately. It was absolutely disgusting. We've seen that just level demons in droves. And if you combine that with like an oil flask or something, because the Outcast has an amazing perception, which you're probably going to want to increase as you level up. I think the oil flask benefits from perception when it applies damage or something, so you can kick out horrendous amounts of damage, and it's even worse if you then pick up something like a carnal bow, if you're lucky enough to find that, where basically you kill something and an arrow explodes out the corpse and then goes and hits another target, even one that you can't see. It's just absolutely disgusting. So those cards there are savage. They're like bread and butter cards. It's kind of crazy if you don't take them, in my opinion. But all these other cards that we're going to go through are really good too. So there are a lot of choices to make. So aim shot, by using 2 of your ranged attacks, you can do an aim shot which gives you +1 to hit and +1d6 damage. Whilst that's very good, and whilst the extra damage is also excellent, you don't need it, because if you just take like a longbow and go smith it up at the blacksmith, just shove some gold into it and a demonite shard, and your bow is always going to get 1d6 additional damage versus demons anyway. And most of the monsters are demons in Darklight, so you've got a bow which is then doing 3d6 damage, plus your perception of 4, plus an additional 2 or 3 from the weapon itself, and then maybe you increase your perception as well. You're going to be throwing out disgusting amounts of damage. You're going to be piling 20 plus damage onto opponents really easily. So I don't think aim shot is required. Blood arrow, at the start of each turn you may create 1 blood arrow by suffering 1 wound, and you may use it on your next ranged attack, which will deal +2 damage. It's not worth it. You're harming yourself to do a little bit more damage, and you don't need it because you're kicking out tons of damage anyway. So those are predominantly the ranged cards. Most of those are excellent. They are really, really good. There are some melee ones like Demonic Anger. You get to hit on the 3+, and again, whilst that's an excellent card, unless you're going to be using versatile and swapping items around all the time, which you've also got to remember to do each turn, which is aggro, because that takes you back into necromancer territory where you're constantly juggling stuff. It's not worth it unless you've got versatile, I think at least. Ambidextrous, you no longer suffer the -1 penalty to hit when dual wielding. Again, that's really, really good. But again, you need to combine it with Demonic Anger and Versatile to really get any mileage out of it. And what you're essentially doing is you're working towards creating a lesser version of the Revenant, in my opinion. So I don't think melee is really necessary or the way to go. It's not bad, but the range stuff is so much better, so you might as well use that. And like I say, pick up a short bow for nothing, work towards the long bow, smith it up, get some demonite and gold in there, add that extra d6 damage, and it's disgusting, especially with something like Arrowstorm. Then you get onto the pets. The pets are actually quite good. So you get a loyal friend if you want to go for it. You can have a snake, giant, spider, one of the two, and the pet will give you +1 armour, and at level 6 it will give you +2 armour. And it's good if you've kind of got all those other skills and you want to start diversifying. The pets are good, especially when you start adding on these additional skills. So Deadly Bite, whenever you suffer a melee attack, which scores a 1, your pet has the opportunity to poison your opponent. And at level 10, you're never going to get to level 10, it will do 2 poison. I wouldn't bother with that. It's very situational, and you won't hit level 10, so doing 1 poison on the return attack is neither here nor there really. Not when you're kicking out the chronic amounts of damage that the Outcast pours out of the bow, because they're not going to be there long enough to die from poison. You're just going to shred them with arrows. Vicious Attack, level 4 skill, once per turn, send your pet to melee attack a target up to 6 squares away. I mean, that is quite useful. Until the start of your next turn, you'll lose the advantages granted by Deadly Bite and Loyal Friend. This melee attack hits on 3+ and does 3d6 damage. Critical hits also apply 2 damage. If you're going to go for pets, that's very good because it is doing 3d6 damage, so that's interesting, because of the potential for high damage there, and it's a freebie attack at the end of the day. And if you start combining that with other things like oil flasks, and if you do want to do the melee weapon swaps, then you're just piling out damage left, right and centre. You might also want to consider going for the wrist bows, so you're chucking out even more attacks. Literally this character just destroys things, so do take it, especially if you're struggling with the game. It's just crazy not to take the Outcast. Inseparable, when suffering wounds caused by a melee or ranged attack, you may let your pet suffer them instead, completely negating the effects of the attack. This can only be done once per turn. Again, that's amazing. So if you're going to go down the pet route, then the Vicious Attack, the Inseparable, in addition to a Loyal Friend, they're all good. But I would focus on the shooting ones first, and maybe once you're done with that branch of the tree, then you look at pets or something, because there might not be any other shooting cards that you want, or shooting skills I should say, that you want to take. There are a whole raft of movement skills as well, and they're all quite good, but I just don't think they're necessary, because when you compare them to the shooting ones we've just been through, they can't hold a candle to them, or an electric candle as in this case. So you've got Slippery, tumbling for the purpose of escaping a threatened area will cost you 1 stamina. It's great. I mean, you rely on stamina a lot in this game to evade, and this character will make use of evasion and armour. It's nice that it can use both, so you might want to distribute those evasion and armour points kind of evenly. So you can go for lots of different types of gear. It's not going to hinder you because you're probably not going to be using magic. And then you've got Agile. You may step through squares blocked by other characters as long as you do not end your movement on them. So again, it's useful for kind of manoeuvring through congested areas, but I don't think you're going to need it. You're going to be destroying stuff, so the chances of it becoming an obstacle is quite slim. Yeah, if you're playing with other Accursed, they might get in the way from time to time, but usually you're going to be hanging around at the back, just letting off volleys of arrows, so I don't think you'll need that. Then you've got Leap. Your tumble is replaced by Leap. You may move up to 2 squares away. Again, it's handy, but again, I don't think you need it. You're better off just planting your 2 fleet on the floor and just hurling arrows left, right, and centre and just destroying stuff. Because ultimately, if nothing's standing, you're not going to take any damage. The rest of your team's not going to take any damage, and the game becomes a lot easier. So if you've got something like this, just nuking things, and you've got the Accursed, just throwing healing around. And then you've got like the Blood Witch just manipulating the table for you with skills like manipulation or spells like manipulation. The game becomes a hell of a lot easier. So my advice would be to just focus on what the Outcast excels at, and that's basically shooting stuff to bits. Stalker, you may now take your attack phase before your movement phase. That is quite useful, because there have been many times when I've seen the Outcast being played where you kind of want to shoot before you move, because maybe you want to get out of the way of any return fire, and that's usually when you're facing things like Shaman and you don't want to get hit by fireballs, and you know that you might not take them out in one go because they're high health and stuff like that. However, if you do kind of skulk out the way, all you're really doing is putting more hurt onto your teammates. So if you're playing solo, it's useful. If you're playing in a group, I think you're better off just becoming another target so that wounds can get distributed amongst the party. But it is a useful skill nonetheless. So out of all those miscellaneous ones we've just looked at, it does serve purpose. Then we get on some odd ones which I don't think are necessary, but I'm going to go through them anyway. So you've got Bloodlust. Whenever you kill an adjacent enemy, you are healed by 2 wounds. The chances of you being next to anyone are very slim, because you're just going to be trashing things from afar, and it's the job of other characters to keep the immediate area clear. I mean, the Outcast job really is to be working its way from the back ranks forwards, and then you meet up with the melee guys who are probably still chewing their way through the first rank of monsters, to be frank, given the rate at which this character goes. Then we got Shadow Blend. When evading, your attacks suffer -1 to hit. I'm not entirely sure how this works, because I thought you declared whether you were going to evade after you were hit. I didn't think you did it before. I thought you declared whether you were evading or tumbling after the point of being hit, but before damage is taken. So if that's the case, I'm not quite sure how this one works, but -1 to hit, I mean, it's useful, but when you compare it to these other skills, there are better things out there, and it's a cliched saying of the best form of defence is probably being really good at attacking, because if there's nothing standing, you're not going to take any damage. Then we've got Succubus Law. Your skin releases a scent which distracts and subdues those around you. Getting Black Widow vibes here. Permanently gain +1 evasion and +1 charisma. That's okay. +1 evasion is useful, +1 charisma less so, but it's a way of bumping up your evasion, I guess. But again, I just don't think it's worth it. When you look at things like Point Blank Sniper, Arrow Storm, all those things that we talked about, I can't see the point in taking it really. There are better skills out there. But none of these skills are bad. They're all good, but some of them are just amazing. I'm not going to say they're overpowered, because I don't think they are, because the game is difficult, and it's down to the job of the Accursed to put together a good synergy, and this character is designed to kill stuff at the end of the day, and that's what you should be doing with it. So other than that, what else is there to say? So Demonic Heritage. So you may not equip or consume items with the keyword blessed, but this does not include blessed water. I don't see that really being too much of a problem. The Demonic Eyes is great, so you can see in the dark, so you can shoot all the way down those long corridors, which I mentioned earlier. I mean, overall, this is just a great character. Take it. give it a bow straight away as soon as you get out of that first dungeon. Just go to the shop, even if you can only afford a short bow or a crossbow, which I think costs you 15, which is nothing. Just get one, put it in its hands, give the Outcast point blank straight away so it doesn't get shut down in close combat, and you're already on your way to having a character which will literally kick ass. So there's not really much more to say about the Outcast. The character is pretty easy to use. It's very much point and click, and it's a good character to use if you've not played the game before, and you can just rely on others to do provide the other supporting roles which you'll need. For example, the Blood Witch, I think is imbued with pain. That works really well on the Outcast. You're going to give the Outcast even more damage, and I think there are some kind of area effect spells out there, and I think the Accursed has some miracles as well, which will do damage or wounds to a lot of targets, but it's not enough to actually kill them. That's quite handy in a way, because if you've got those sorts of characters like the Blood Witch or the Accursed who knock a bit of life off everything, and then the Outcast goes in following turn right at the beginning with its crazy initiative of 7, probably going to be 9 if you shove a tattoo on that, you're going to be finishing off rooms or map tiles really quickly. Just knock a few points of a few wounds off all the monsters in front of you, chuck out an arrow storm or something like that, or maybe the Outcast is even lobbing an oil flask. You will just decimate demons in droves. So it's an amazingly good character. Do take it, and hopefully this guide helps.